Hello, everybody. Happy 2022. Hopefully not 2022.0, but actually 2022. We can move on with our lives past all of this craziness. Like, that is what we all would prefer. So I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday season and kicked off the new year by going to bed at like 10 a.m. like I did. Not 10 a.m., excuse me, 10 p.m. Because I'm too old to be staying up late. But 10 a.m. is pushing it a little bit. So I'm not quite that crazy. So we're super excited to be back with you guys here on the Manuscripts channel. You'll be see that we got some new photo backgrounds. Wanted to try and make it look a little bit cooler. Plus manuscripts, libraries, it all fits the aesthetic.
Refresh for the new year.
Yeah, exactly. New year, new background, all that kind of stuff. So we're excited. We're kicking off our season of revisions and kind of talking about how to do that, right? Because revisions are hard. And so we want to try and help you guys over the next couple of weeks, give you some really insightful tips on how to improve all of that. And as a reminder, down in the show notes is a link to free resources. There is a revisions template specifically that is down there for you guys, along with some other worksheets talking about plotting and, really from anything from plotting to outlining to brainstorming and character development and all that fun stuff. So all of that is down in the show notes for you guys. If you haven't already, please make sure to go subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. So that way you get notified when we go live. And we've got a ton of content. And when I say a ton of content, I mean a ton of content coming to your guys' hours of content. So prepare yourselves for 2022. It's going to be a glorious time. So to kind of kick things off, we have a special guest with us here that we're going to pull in just a few minutes. But to kind of start a little bit, we're going to talk about the intro into revisions and some of the main components. So the essential part of revisions is really understanding your developmental edits. We talked through that in December. We did some edits with you guys. And developmental editing is that big picture for edits. It is the plot. It is the structure. It is how does everything move through the book? Okay. That's the big picture. Now, once you've gone through that and you've looked at it and you're like, okay, I think I kind of have a general idea. The next step, once you've kind of identified those plot holes, especially those, you want to look at the character arcs. Like, do they make sense? Is there consistency over the course of your book? That is really what that next step is. Once you've got the plot holes, then it's consistency throughout the whole thing. Now, special note about plot holes. They can be sometimes very, very big, or it could be one tiny detail. That is the aggravating part about plot holes. So you really want to take your time and make sure that you've addressed those and you've really thought through it. Because if you don't, there's going to be that one sitting there and the reader's going to go, wait a minute. His dad was that guy in that chapter. But now it's different over here. So again, that flows with the consistency. So just kind of keep those things in mind as you're working through revisions, and especially the pacing and the overall outline. Like, you're going to have to rework that a little bit. And if you want ideas or some assistance in how to work those outlines, I highly recommend checking out the free resources because we have a story outline chart. And one of the things that allows you to do is look at things in acts. And this works even if you're not fiction, right? Because you're just setting it up in parts. So whether it's an act or a part, doesn't matter. It breaks it up into 10 chapters per act. and then you can kind of maneuver through it. So I highly recommend going down to check out those free resources. So that is going to be what we're kind of kicking off this month talking about in the revisions process. I'm going to pass this along to Mackenzie, and she is going to give us a little bit of background on who we are, what we do, and all of that good stuff. So, especially what we do during our coaching calls. So, Mackenzie, take it away.
Yes. So this is what we're doing today. And I promise it does have something to do with revisions. But Stephen and I are both author coaches for New Degree Press. And New Degree Press is a hybrid publishing company. And what that means for those unfamiliar with that term, if we haven't mentioned it before, a hybrid publishing company is a company where you can have all of the resources for you in one place to produce a great book and self-publish instead of going out and hiring all of those little pieces individually. You have all of these vetted resources to guide you through the entire timed process of producing a fabulous book. We're talking like really, really great. No funny business. So one of the tools and resources that is provided through New Degree Press is author coaches. Author coaches are previously published authors with New Degree Press who are available for one-on-one calls, speaking from our experience in publishing books. So what we do is we often have calls with people like our special guest here today, where we talk through any and all questions that they might have about any part of the process, whether it's crowdsourcing for your book, creating an author audience, or revising your book, working with your editors, all of the things. So today we're going to do kind of a mock author coaching call with our special guest, who I will introduce. And we will be talking about, in particular, they have questions about the revisions process because it's that time of year. So today we have Michelle with us. And Michelle R. Ferguson is a global transformation executive with expertise in operations, finance, and shared services. She is a DEI advocate, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a serial mentor. Currently, she's advising on the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. I love museums. On the launch of their diversity initiative. She's part of the New Degree Press community of authors who are currently in the revisions phase of process with a book that they are expecting to publish in May of this year, 5 months from now. So Michelle's book is called Womentoring. Working title. I hope I said that right. It's like mentoring, women mentoring. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, it's great to be here. And
all right.
I haven't figured out the wording on the title, so maybe we can work through that.
Working title, yeah. Always. A title is working until you publish. You can change it anytime, really. So, Michelle, please tell us a little bit about your book.
Sure. I have long had a passion for mentoring, and specifically for women mentoring other women to help both partners rise. I think we should, lift while we rise. So it's been a passion of mine. I believe everybody has a book in them, and I'm thrilled for the opportunity to translate my passion into a book.
Rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, so you have some questions for us today.
Sure. I'm a little curious about organizing during the revision process. So I submitted a couple of chapters to my revisions editor today. And I'm just curious about whether, do I keep revising while I wait for feedback? Do I wait for the feedback? A little bit of both, just so any guidance on what I should be doing right now.
Yeah. Stephen, I'd love for you to answer this question first.
Yeah. So, when I was going through the process, I kept going because there's really two main stages to the revisions process. Typically, there is the first initial stage where you're addressing your acquisition editor feedback and getting a little bit of feedback from some of your early beta readers, potentially, depending on how early you reached out to them. Me being the type of person who wants to have everything done in advance as much as possible, I crammed my acquisition editor feedback and beta feedback into the same revisions process because it actually all lined up with the single thing of I needed to fix my world building, which meant rewriting the entire book. But once I started, I just kept going. And then my revisions feedback came as I went. And then typically, once you've made it through that first round of revisions, you're going to kind of go back and start addressing some of those revision editor questions, comments, concerns, and specific edits. And then you begin working through that process. And it's actually I found it a very helpful way to go about it. I know for a lot of people, they did the revisions, suggestions, and the beta at that time. And for me, it made more sense to do beta and acquisition because those were the bigger picture. I wanted my revisions editor to really focus in on the smaller details, the more nitty-gritty stuff. I'd get things like, hey, I want to know what color the leaves are in this particular scene. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good one to do. So the bigger the picture you paint on the front end, the more of the nitty-gritty details you should be getting from your editor, like as you go back through or as they follow behind you, because you're addressing kind of some of those bigger areas on the front end.
Yep. I would echo that with a couple things. One, don't feel like you ever have to wait on your revisions editor in order to do things. And then the other thing too is being in very consistent communication with your revisions editor about what your plan is in working together. Because, and I speak from experience in that for me, I'm going through the same thing right now where I'm in the revisions process and I'm working with my editor. And we had a conversation about this exact thing where they said, start doing this and we're going to go through the entire book 3 times. So I just go, he's going to follow me. And then I'm going to come back and address the things that he said the first time. And as I'm doing that, he's going to follow behind me again. And then I'm going to come back one more time. So we have planned our next 3 months so that we're getting through the book once a month, which is quite a bit. And it depends on how long your book is. But as long as you're in consistent communication with your editor on what your plan is and how you're going to collaborate and who's going to follow who and at what time, then that should give you a clearer sense about organization.
That's really, really helpful. I think I'm like you, Stephen. I want to sort of get ahead of myself. And so I just sometimes have to pull back a little bit.
The other thing too that's helpful is if you're having regular either messaging conversations or phone calls with your editor, so that way, even if you're just trucking along, they can say, hey, a couple things I've noticed, keep an eye out for this as you keep moving forward. So it gives them an opportunity to tell you what they're seeing so that way there's not as much work for you to do when you come back around. Does that make sense? Like more communication, the better.
Yeah, that's sort of my inclination is I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and then get the, oh, by the way.
Right.
Like here's some basic kind of thing. Like
right. Which is why like the consistent calls or messages is important because that way you don't have to go back and look at every single note that they've made. You can just say, hey, let's have a 15-minute check-in. Here are some big things that I'm noticing.
Great. That's really helpful.
Yeah. And I would also say one of the key aspects to the revisions process is let's say you get 5 chapters done with before your editor has had a chance to look at them. And then you're like, hey, I'd like to plan a time. When do you think you'd have those 5 chapters done? And because what I want to do is I want to figure out of those 5 chapters, what were some of the consistent issues you saw taking place? So that way, when I start working on the next set of chapters, I have an idea of some of the issues that might arise, but I can kind of nip in the bud before they become a huge issue, thus causing me more time and anguish and sorrow as I have to go back and redo all of this stuff. And so then they can be like, yep, sounds good. I can have those done to you by Tuesday. Let's have a call on Wednesday. And then let's go through everything that I noticed that was a glaring issue. And then you can avoid those moving forward.
That's perfect, because that's what I'm trying to avoid. Because my first draft, I was using too much passive voice. And if I had gotten the feedback, I could have not gotten through the whole draft in passive tone. So thank you. That's all.
Yeah, and don't feel bad. Passive voice, I'm yelled at constantly by Pro Writing Aid for the amount of passive voice that I use.
Yep.
All right, what other questions do you have?
So again, I'm always trying to anticipate and trying to look things holistically. So at this point in the process, are there other things I should be thinking about or worrying about other than pure editing and revising?
Yes. If Kyra were here, I know what she would say, so I'm going to say it. Audience building is still something that you should be thinking about.
Yep.
And it definitely doesn't have to be anything elaborate or anything that distracts you or causes you stress or pulls you too far away from your book. But it's still something to kind of keep up a consistent cadence with, whatever that consistent cadence is or looks like for you. If it looks like posting once a week, if it looks like connecting with beta readers once a week, if it looks like sending a newsletter once a week, doing something to make sure that the people who are supporting you and following on your book journey are engaged and excited and paced with you and know what's coming, so that the launch is that much sweeter. You only launch your first book once.
Yep. I would say the thing to keep in mind, and this is a very, very hard balance. And one that I did not balance well when I was going through revisions, because I was just drowning in words. But is the long game. Publishing is actually the easiest part of this whole thing. Like, it's everything that comes afterwards that's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
The amount of anguish that I went through just for revisions and like writing 61,000 words in 21 days, like that was easy in comparison to the marketing that came afterwards over the last year.
Right.
So what you want to try and do is be thinking about the larger picture, which is the long game, which effectively really starts when you hit publish and when your book goes live. And so what you want to do now is start setting up success for then. So if that's getting a, let's say, like one podcast scheduled a month, that's easy because it's not guaranteed that you're going to be doing the podcast that month. You've just scheduled it. It might be the following month, might be 6 months down the road because they be busy bees. Who knows? But you're doing at least something for the long game. Same goes for a blog post, whether that's on Medium, LinkedIn, or your own website. Trying to do at least one article or blog post a month to address different topics, maybe that your book is talking about. Maybe it's just saying, hey, you know what? This is part of my experience with writing this book. This is where I'm at on the author journey. This is where I'm at in the publishing process. Here's what I've been thinking about overall. You know, you can kind of fudge that a little bit. Taking bits and pieces, like as you're editing, you're like, man, this quote, I'm brilliant, so I need to share this with people. Post about it. Post about why that's meaningful to you, because it's easy. You're going through revisions, so you're going to see it. Honestly, some of the quotes that I have for my characters, they're not even in this draft. They're not even in the book. But they're some of my favorite quotes, and so I decided to incorporate them anyway, because I'll share it in other extracurricular activities later on. You know, so you're trying to balance the, holy crap, we're in the revisions phase, while also being like, Okay, but what's the long game? Because if I fall off the
Yeah.
face of the earth for, you know, the next 5 months, it's going to be a problem. So hopefully that helps with some of that long-term thinking.
That does, and it's helpful because I have a unique opportunity, well, two, because January is National Mentoring Month, so I can play on that in January, and March is Women's History Month, so I have something to tie in that I can jump on. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And those themes are something that you absolutely should be grabbing a hold of, like you plan on doing, because when you are incorporating yourself into the larger narrative of whatever's going on, you know, with the world, then you become a part of that thing, which is super, super helpful. You know, like we did NaNoWriMo back in November. So National Novel Writing Month. We were doing that. Preptober, we were a part of that. You know, there's going to be other things coming up this year that we want to try and integrate ourselves into. And so the more you do that, especially within the author community, finding other authors, whether they're a part of New Degree Press or outside of New Degree Press in the larger indie author community, talking with those people and asking them to do collaborations with you. Do Instagram live streams, do LinkedIn live streams, you know, talk about the topics that you're passionate about. Talk about where you're at in the book process, find out what their publishing process was like. You know, these are the types of things that when you think outside of the box, suddenly there's a whole array of opportunities available to you.
I like your ideas too, Michelle, because when you think about piggybacking off of the things that are already going to happen, right? National Women's History Month or National Mentoring Month, those things, and you tag with them, create content related to them, you're going to be meeting your readers where they're at. And you're going to find them much easier and make yourself known much easier to them, rather than shouting in the middle of the park with a megaphone. You're walking under the tree where the club meets.
Great way to frame it. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that, and especially because, you know, you could shout into the void all you want, but if no one's there, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
Oh, and the club that you're looking for, I like this metaphor, because they might not hear you wherever you're shouting from. And that's that on social media visibility.
Yerp. What other questions can we potentially answer for you?
So I guess jumping on the long game, maybe the long game and the big game, right? So it's easy to get caught in the weeds of revising and where do I need to fill in holes, but it's in some ways a slog, right? Like just working through it. Do you have any tips on just how to keep your mind in the right place, how to keep your energy up during this kind of potentially draining part of the process?
I have a couple things. If there's any content that needs to be added, one of the ways I keep myself motivated to writing, especially if you're writing anything fiction, is I picture this is going to sound kind of funny, but I picture the character frozen in time and literally stuck where I last left them, and I have to write them out of it. So even if you want to apply this to nonfiction, you know, feeling like you need to write yourself out of something is going to leave you feeling much more relieved and re-energized to get back to working on it. The other thing too that I found most helpful, and this is for me as a person who's very much affected by space and weather and things like that, is getting yourself in a different spot to write every now and then. Mix it up a little bit. If you sit at a desk all day for a job, maybe don't write at that desk. I literally have I'm looking at it right now. I have 2 desks in my office because I work from home at one desk. And when it's time to write, I go and I sit at the other desk because it just puts me in a different headspace. And I came up with this when the pandemic hit and I couldn't go to my favorite coffee shop every day in order to write, because that was my original MO. So change of pace, mix it up a little bit, will help re-energize and re-motivate.
That's great. I have my desk is actually on wheels, and you can see that's actually real up there. So I will periodically just turn it around just to see something different, but I haven't been doing that lately, so that's a good reminder.
Yeah, so I'm in the basement. Yeah, I know it doesn't look at it because I'm a fabulous decorator, but my desk faces one way, and that one way is the back of built-in bookshelves and a vocal booth. That's it. There's nothing pretty back here, and I don't really have anywhere else to write. So for me, what I tend to do is I will get my Spotify playlists, and I'm going to put my post-apocalyptic music on, or I'm going to put on my chill step, or I'm going to put on my fantasy music. Depends on my mood, depends on the story. And I'm going to get into that. I'm going to pull up my copious amounts of notes for both stories that I'm currently working on. And then that is when I start going to town with writing. But sometimes the motivation to actually sit down and write just isn't there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you write yourself into a corner and you're just like, cannot fix. Take a step back. Like as much of a time constraint as there is with revisions, you have to be able to allow yourself a breath during that. Otherwise, your head just goes and implodes on itself. You know, I wrote 61,000 words in 21 days, and my brain was the consistency of mashed potatoes. I was writing like 12 to 14 hours a day, roughly, well into the night, and I was exhausted, and I had to go. Now, part of that is because I don't revise, I rewrite the whole thing. I don't go back in and make changes here and there. I tend to rewrite the entire chapter because in between those, I've had an idea, and I will take some of those concepts and I will apply them to the chapter. I might take whole sections and apply them to the chapter, but overall, I tend to sit down and just start rewriting that particular scene because it's new, right? Even if it's almost the exact same, it's newer. And my writing has improved between that one. It could literally be like 2 days difference. My writing has improved over those 2 days because I've thought about it. The first one was just a brain dump. The second one is like, okay, I know what I really want to say now.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to take the time to actually say the thing that I wanted to say.
Or if you're not feeling motivated to write because there's a little bit of an imposter syndrome thing going on, watch a crappy movie, read a crappy book, hear me out, whatever that means to you, because then you go, oh, well, I could do that. Like if you need an ego boost, go and look at all the things that are out there. Remember that even the classics have 1-star reviews. Your book won't be for everybody.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things help me get inspired to write. Also, just watching good movies in general, like, and thinking what's good about them. What is the pacing? What's just reading good books that make me feel like I can do it and I can emulate those people. The Twilight shade in the comments.
I have to throw it out at least once a stream. Like if you need a bad book to read, like I recommend Twilight. And
it's a national bestseller.
It is, because it doesn't require you to think. And if you want a bad movie to watch, go watch Sharknado. You'll feel so much better about yourself as a writer if you go and you watch Sharknado. And they just keep coming. So bad. Any other questions, Michelle, that we can answer for you?
Really, really helpful. I'm always appreciative of coaching.
Awesome. So I don't see currently anything in the chat. So Mackenzie, any closing thoughts as we kind of kick off the new year with talk of revisions and what that looks like and how to make it better?
Yeah, that's a lot of different things that you've just pitched, but I will tell you that my closing thoughts for this one. If you find yourself in the position of Michelle with questions, looking for insights, looking to talk to people who have lived this experience, feel free to reach out to us at any number of the links below. We are happy to talk to you. It is our job to help authors. If you are interested in joining the program, we're happy to help you that way. If you're interested in talking to any of us in one-off little conversations, that is something that we can do with you, and we are happy to do it. We like seeing you guys succeed. We want there to be more authors in the world because it is a brand new publishing industry thing that's happening right now, I gotta say, and that's a technical term. More and more people are publishing books every day. Anyone can be a published author, and I think that is just a fantastic thing. But remember that nobody writes a book alone. So reach out to people, connect with your community, connect with people who have done it before, get all your questions answered, and remember, we're happy to help.
Absolutely. And I think, guys, as one of the things that I have seen over and over and over again with authors is that everybody is going to give you a different opinion, and almost every opinion will contradict the other person that you are asking. And
because
so
everyone has a different experience. There are so many
Exactly.
different ways to publish a book, really.
Yep. And there's people who are like, traditional publishing the only way, self-publishing is the only way, hybrid's the only way. The fact of the matter is that they're all right and all at the same time wrong.
Yeah.
Like, there's not actually one way to publish. It depends on your author goals. So rather than simply asking to the void, because really that's what a Facebook group is. I love a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm in, but you're going to get a very different answer. So if you're thinking of, you know what, I'm kind of interested in traditional publishing and the whole process for that, ask somebody who has traditionally published that specific question. And then if you're like, but now I'm curious about self-publishing, ask several other people about self-publishing and what that experience looked like, versus causing a fist fight like a family Thanksgiving in the comments section of the Facebook group. It's just going to overwhelm you. And don't take what we're saying as the gospel truth. Go and look to see what other people have done. We're sharing with you our experience. Michelle is sharing with you her current experience. So go and learn and figure out what is the best way. What goal do you want to create for 2022 for yourself, for publishing your book? So that way you can actually take that aspiring part off of your bio and it could just say published author versus aspiring author. That is your guys' challenge for the start of 2022. If you guys have questions, please make sure to drop them down in the comments. We will be answering them. And if you have any other additional questions that are more specific and you would like to address it more one-on-one, the email to reach us is also down there. So definitely check it out. Guys, thank you so much again for everything that you do to help support this channel. We're looking forward to this new year. We have a lot of content coming your way. Fabulous, fabulous stuff. We're going to get into marketing. We're going to get into author branding. We're going to be talking about building audiences. We're going to be talking about all sorts of amazing things to help you guys reach the goal of publishing your book. So I hope all of you have a wonderful Monday night, and we will be back next week, next Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I remembered this time. And I guess 6 p.m. Central, because there are some people who live over there, I guess. So we hope you guys have a wonderful time, and we will see you guys next week. Take care.
Thank you.